Hey guys, welcome back. BGC Gara here. We're back with Season 9, Episode 51 of our weekly Q&A videos. I was going to say this is for the week of, but then I realized that that's the wrong thing. I'm all mixed up. I'm a little tired today.
Yeah, you're out of sorts?
No, well, does out of sorts
discombobulated
have a negative connotation? I don't know.
Maybe it does. I don't know.
Anyways, this is a video and a podcast, and there's a way of consuming it in both formats. And you can figure that out if you want to, or you can not figure it out if you don't want to. You can pretty much do whatever you want. I actually have very little control over what you do on a sort of moment-to-moment basis,
Yes,
and
true.
Even on sort of like a macro level, I have almost no sort of planning capacity in your life, so you can kind of just do whatever. And I hope you do things that make you feel good and set yourself up for success in life.
So this is the opportunity at the beginning sometimes to ground it in what's happening in our lives, like the present.
Yeah.
So I want to say a couple things. One is, I don't want to mention a book that I just been reading, but I wanted, while it's on top of mind, I just finished watching the first season of a show called Happy Valley.
Yeah.
It's not a happy show. It's a police drama. Mm-hmm. It is really good. It is well written. The plotting is sharp. The acting is superb. That tension... Like, there were moments, I'm not a crier. There were moments that I became teary. And my gut was like, I felt like it was in the back of my throat. Like, my heart was kind of back of my throat. My gut was there. Like, everything was just, I felt like really invested. Excellent show. The British do something with their TV shows that I think North American television doesn't. And it has a lot to do with casting. Because they are not, the actors in the shows are not what you'd call classically beautiful.
Yeah.
And it helps because then it feels more real in some ways.
They feel more just like folks.
Yeah, and not actors who are pretending.
That's cool.
Yeah, excellent show.
If you're looking for sort of an excellent show that's a lot more positive, can I recommend Acapulco?
Okay.
It's an Apple TV Plus show, so you'll have to either watch it on there or find another place to get at it. Mm-hmm. But it's really well written. It's super good for a lot of the same reasons, but it's kind of the opposite sort of vibe where it's just warm and fun. Yeah. And so it's like a dramedy-ish, but it's focuses a lot more on sort of the plot sort of unfurling and more on the comedy and warmth of a dramedy. It's a really sort of character-driven story, and it does a great job with all the writing and everything. 2 seasons out. I watched the second season relatively recently, and I just rewatched the first season. And it is a fun watch the second time. It's a fun watch the first time. It's really, really good. I would highly recommend it.
Yeah, I intend to watch it. My problem is the way you described it. It's predominantly English, but there are moments with Spanish with subtitles that you need to.
Yeah, because it's set in Mexico.
Yeah.
And they speak English or Spanish as it would make sense. It's set in Mexico, sort of centered around a resort.
Okay.
And so they speak Spanish when it would make sense for them to speak Spanish, and they speak English when it would make sense for them to speak English. And there's subtitles, but you do have to read sometimes, and you have to be ready to read at any time because it can swap between them pretty fluidly. It's not like there's one scene an episode where they start talking Spanish. It might be them switching, from one language to another, within a conversation or from moment to moment. Yeah.
See, this is my difficulty. I don't have a lot of time to watch content. So the key times for me is when I skip rope, where I can pay attention to the screen. I'm not looking at anything else, but that's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 150 minutes a week.
Yeah.
And that's it. So 30-minute, 5 sessions. I don't get through a lot of content. And what I've been watching lately when I've been doing that is the Physical 100 on Netflix, which is really weird because I don't know if it's the way they've dubbed it, but the things that the way people talk, it doesn't feel natural. They're Korean, but it feels is it maybe like a difference in convention and manners, that there's certain phrases that I just don't expect them to come out of their mouths like that. Very polite, very considerate, and very how do you say it? So I'm just used to when you're watching sports that people get really into it, and they do all these things to make it
non-confrontational, non-aggressive.
Yeah, non-aggressive, which is I'm not used to in North American sports, and it's even more jarring when you see these people who are really big and muscular. Like, they look like they should be
angry.
Really, yeah.
There's like a culture of being kind of like trash talking.
Yes.
And trying to get in somebody else's head, right? Where your victory is supposed to be both physical and mental.
Yes.
You're really supposed to kind of beat them down, and that's like one of the ways that you're supposed to sort of get the upper hand is to take up mental space and energy for them. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. It is very, very interesting.
I think it's interesting especially when you watch like a lot of stuff from another culture, or one show a lot, where you can start to sort of pick up on patterns of stuff, because sometimes it's hard to tell if it's just the individual person or the individual show, or if it's more representative of its culture, right? Because obviously you don't want to watch like a single reality TV show from somewhere else and then go, I bet this is what everybody in this country is like.
That's right.
Because if you think about some of the reality TV shows that you've watched that are set in like America or the UK or Canada, you know, that are totally not representative of what most people are like in your country.
Right.
You can't triangulate too much.
Right.
But then if you start seeing more stuff, you start to be able to sort of triangulate at least a little bit. You go, this is how people on reality TV act in this country.
Right.
And, you know, one of the things that I've noticed from the limited amount of Japanese reality TV that I've watched is that they seem to be less interested in drama, and they seem to be more willing to show the like crew, that there are other people involved in a reality TV production, in a way that North American reality TV shows really aren't.
Right. Like that one, it's Japanese, right? Where the kids do the errands. What's it called?
Old enough. Yeah, that is totally Japanese.
So you can totally see the crews.
Yeah, and they don't try to hide it, and they'll you know, say like, oh, the crew came in to help and whatever. And there's a really great reality TV show that's on Netflix called Ainori Love Wagon.
Okay.
And there was a whole scene where they chastised the group of people. The whole plot is that they're supposed to be like, I think it's 5. It's been a while since I've watched it. People who are on this sort of van trip together, and they're supposed to they call it like a poor man's vacation. So they don't give them like a huge amount of extra money. Right. They have sort of like pocket money and stuff, but it's meant to allow them to live, but not like extravagantly.
But not enjoy themselves.
Well, no, it's just to not extravagantly. It's supposed to sort of mimic like a backpacking trip, like a find yourself kind of trip.
Right.
So they might, you know, choose to cook a meal one day to save money.
Right.
If their hotel has like a stove that they can use.
Right.
Or they might, you know, they'll have money, but it'll be enough, like they'll have money and free time to go to like a market, but it'll only be enough to buy like a meal there if you want like an extra like snack or try some new food, or like like a small souvenir. Right. They're not like giving them really sort of like big bombastic stuff, and then every once in a while they do sort of little excursions that are clearly planned by the crew.
Right.
But there was like an extended scene in one of the episodes where a bunch of people lost track of time and they came back like an hour late. Mm-hmm. And there's an extended scene where one of the producers came up and chastised them for making all the crew wait. Right. And like the camera people wait. And they said, you know, everybody's here, right? You get to have this nice trip. And there's a lot of people here who are doing their jobs, right? And they're holding big, heavy cameras and they're following you around all day.
Yeah.
So when you show up an hour late, these people don't have as much time to sleep. They have to work longer hours. They're holding this big stuff. They're like, it's not respectful, right? So we're trying to make you have a good time. We're trying to help you find like a relationship on the show. And you're not being respectful of their time. And then they apologize to the camera crew, like in front of like everybody. And that was like, not only did that happen, but it also made the edit, right? Like that was the sort of dramatic tension in that part of the show, was you guys are not being considerate of the people around you who, for them, this is a job. For you, it's a vacation. It's sort of a fun thing. And for them, it's a job. And I saw that, and it has stuck with me so strongly, because in most reality TV in North America, they want you to pretend that nobody else exists except for the people.
Right.
It is just about them. There is not anything about anybody else. And there was a thing on Ainori where one of the contestants on the show was not interested in any of the men. And it turns out she had a crush on one of the cameramen. Or like one of the PAs.
Right.
And then they brought the PA onto the show.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah.
I like that.
So it's really interesting, and it's humanizing of sort of the people making it in a way. And it's hard to not notice when you look at sort of reality TV shows, especially because like sometimes there'll be like a host, right? And that host is like the only other person who's allowed to exist. The camera crew doesn't exist, right? There's nobody around. They make it seem like they're in sort of their own pocket universe, right? Where the only people that exist are...
And they will make exceptions with medical emergency or something. I'm thinking of Survivor specifically.
Yeah, but it's like a big deal. When you see like a paramedic, you go, oh my God, right? They brought somebody else onto the show, right? You know, because you have all of those things where they're being prompted with questions for like the confessionals, right?
Right.
And instead of, you know, they've edited out anybody asking them questions, all of that stuff like that. There's almost never the hand of a producer. And there was like, for example, a scene in like Love is Blind, where one guy got in a fight and he got really upset, and he came out and he was talking to like a cameraman or a producer, and he's like, come on, don't tell me you wouldn't be pissed off if you saw that. And the person behind the camera was like what do you like somebody should be pissed off? He's like, no, I'm talking about you, right? And it was like it's a really weird sort of like it almost feels like it's breaking the fourth wall to even acknowledge that there are other people there for a lot of that. But then in like, you know, Japanese reality shows, and I think also that part of that is like this idea that they often have like the people reacting to it, right? They have like a sort of secondary group who is watching the same edit that you're watching in a studio and then giving their feedback, right? So they're a lot more willing to bring attention to stuff and like acknowledge that there are other people there and that it is a show that is being worked on by a crew, and not like sucking you into this sort of like alternate reality of the show. And I think that's really interesting. And obviously I don't think I know nearly enough about Japanese culture to say what that means about the culture at large.
All it really does say is that these are the conventions of this kind of storytelling that they're used to.
But it's an interesting difference. And you kind of see little stuff like that.
Neat. So the last thing in terms of media, I just finished reading a book called Babel, The Necessity of Violence by R.F. Hong, something. I can't remember how it's like. I'm always not really familiar. Like, I think it's Romanization. Is one way, and then there's another term for it when it comes from Mandarin. Like there's one for Cantonese and one for Mandarin, so I'm not really sure. But anyways, so the idea is that there's... Well, actually, I don't even really want to get the idea. I think if language is important, there's a system of magic that involves silver and and language, which is kind of neat and interesting. What I really liked about it, and this book did very well, there's that tension between when you're not of a culture, or you're not of the elite, and whether you want to actually assimilate and get to enjoy the privileges of the elite, or whether you want to just totally tear it all down and make it fair for everybody. Or not make it fair. I mean, that seems idealistic. Not so much make it fair for everybody, but just to make it as fair for as many people as possible.
To try to make things better instead of to make things better for yourself.
Right. And so, all right. So the other thing was I was at an event. It was a talk with R.F. Kuang and another writer that I hadn't read, but I will now because she had some really interesting things to say. The one thing that came up during that talk, an idea that stuck in my head was, do you really want to make things better, or do you want diversification of the elite? And that was what you just said, right? Like whether you want to make it better for everybody, or whether you want to just make it better for yourself, or in some ways, if the principle you're standing for and you're trying to pretend that you're not selfish, is that all you're really doing is making the elite a little bit more diversified. And does that really achieve anything? Because people make the argument that, well, I'm changing things from the inside. I'm just creating the possibility that other people have access to this. But the system is still predicated, like capitalism, right? It's still predicated on the owners taking the workers and extracting value out of what they provide, which means basically underpaying them for the value of their work. Anyways, it was really neat. Like the book itself is really neat. It was clearly, I mean, I'm obviously appreciating it in a different way after that talk. But really interesting. And so if anybody with some familiarity with the immigrant experience and the desire not to stand out, to assimilate, and still maintain a little bit of your own identity. Really interesting. It captures that beautifully. So I highly recommend it.
You know, what you were talking about just kind of twigged in me. There's all these conversations about ChatGPT and AI and the future of AI right now. And one of the things that's interesting is that I have been somebody who for a very long time was interested in AI, and I followed people who were doing like little silly AI products and all this stuff. And I was really I thought it was really cool, and I liked it a lot. And I feel like I've had to become a little bit jaded about it. And it's not that I don't think it's a tool that has a lot of promise and that's really cool and really interesting and that has an uncertain but exciting future.
Right.
But I'm really sort of not a fan of the direction that it's going, specifically because I think if it is unsuccessful, then it's a interesting toy. It's a fun diversion, right? It's the same thing it's always been, and I could be really interested in it. But I'm actually wary of it becoming more useful and a better technology. There's a really good sort of Tom Scott video about the future of AI and what that could mean and what the different possible sort of futures of AI mean. And it's because I see it being turned into a product and really commercialized heavily. And the whole thing is that there's a lot of people saying that it's going to replace a lot of jobs, right? And there have been technologies replacing jobs for forever. But if AI gets really developed, the pitch is, and I think it's possible, although I don't know how likely, is that it's going to replace a lot of jobs that we didn't think were that replaceable relatively quickly. And the thing that I hate about that is that it's going to do the exact same thing that all these technologies have always done, which is that people want to replace the jobs so that the rich people who have control over AI and have the licenses for it can stop paying as many people and just have more money. And it's not going to make life better for really anyone, because the people who are going to be benefiting from it already don't need the money. And the people whose jobs are going to be replaced don't have anything to gain from it, right? The benefits from it, of a sort of a society transformed by AI, where there's less and less jobs. I saw a talk of like a bunch of like business and tech people talking about it, and their sort of prediction was that there was going to be prompt engineer was going to be a new job, which is people just creating better prompts or figuring out how to make prompts to get what you want out of AI better. Basically translators, right? Because it turns out that you need to talk to the AI a little bit differently than you talk to a person to get the best response out of it. And then they said, well, so we think this is going to be a tool. And then once people engineer prompts and once AI improves, that'll be a job for a couple of years. So people will learn this skill, and then 2 years or 4 years later, those people will be out of a job. And then they'll have to learn a new skill. And so that people, in sort of the middle class are going to have to be constantly reskilling to maintain any sort of career. And somebody asked them, like, what about, like, universal basic income? Like, what are we going to do, right? If we're getting rid of all these jobs. And they were like, oh, well, I don't think we're ready yet for universal basic income, like, as a society. And, it made me want to, like, scream, because I'm like, who's we, right? Like, who's we as a society? Because, there were investors there. There were people who had significant stakes in AI companies. There were, there was a lot of the people who were building these things or stood something to gain, or were, speculative. And it was a lot of sort of like really educated people in high status, high paying positions. And, when they say we as a society, when it's dismissed like it's some third party who's not ready for it, I was sitting in a room with a lot of the people who get to sort of make that decision, much more than the average person. And so by sort of passing it off as there's sort of the group isn't ready for it and not taking any personal responsibility. And then somebody was like, if we're like replacing work, I like to spend a lot of like my time working. Like I want to like work like long hours. So I don't, want to be like just stop working if like AI replaces jobs. And it was so not even relevant to the conversation, because universal basic income isn't stopping anybody from working. They said that. I'm like, I wanted to say, like, nobody's stopping you from working, just because you're getting paid enough to live. Like, is the only reason that you're working to accumulate more money than the person next to you? I mean, like, what's your...
It's a rhetorical technique, right? Where, when did you stop abusing your wife? Like, where the question itself, you posed it in a way to frame it with some baked-in assumptions. That if people just take it at face value, you've already led them into a different kind of discussion. So when you mentioned too about the technology, I learned not too long ago about Luddites. You know the term Luddites? It's used as to refer to people, or the idea that there are people who oppose technology. And what's interesting to me is I learned that the Luddites weren't opposed to technology. They were opposed to losing their jobs. So what they did was they actually destroyed machinery. These are, I can't remember, I mean, this was like 1800s English workers who were destroying machinery that had been automating jobs because they were expecting to lose their jobs. So they weren't opposed to the technology. They were opposed to being mistreated. I mean, in some ways, they're like an early union.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yes.
And so then the term Luddite was kind of like a propaganda hatchet job.
Yes.
People repurpose the term. That's interesting.
Yes. I thought it'd be interesting because it's relevant to what we were just talking about.
Yeah, so it's funny because I've followed this thing and I've liked it. Yeah. And I thought it was cool for so many years.
Yes.
And now...
Like Tesla.
Like, I thought Tesla was cool for a long time because there was a lot of things that were really appealing to me.
Right.
And, you know, I thought Bitcoin and crypto was a really interesting thing. I learned about how it worked as sort of like, oh, this is like an interesting idea. This is like a cool, like, sort of tech solution to a problem that I hadn't even thought of. But, like, if you take for granted that this worldview is... there's something to it, right? The sort of more libertarian worldview. This is a really interesting way of trying to solve that.
Right.
And it takes a lot of theory and stuff. And, you know, I thought Bitcoin was cool when there were people talking about it, when it was, you know, it had value, right? It was picking up some hype in Steam, but it had not hit sort of the real big time.
The to the moon hype? That fanaticism?
Yeah, because I think it just kept ratcheting up. I think by the time I had heard about it, and I was hearing about sort of the pure theory part of it, it was probably already the beginning of the end, where it had sort of hit that critical mass of people who were looking for the wrong things out of it, for it to stay sort of just a cool idea. But like a lot of these things are cool and interesting, and they do something, right?
Yes.
And then they reach sort of... not the wrong people, because I think those types of people were with it from the start, right? I think, you know, for all these sort of really weird tech speculation stuff, right from the start, part of the reason why this stuff is being funded and looked into is there are some people who are looking for it to change everything and who are looking to get their payday from it, and that's why that there are some people holding on to it. But I think there's for all of them, there's a time before anybody really saw it on the horizon. There's a time before there was sort of blood in the water, right? And the sharks began to circle it as an idea, where it was a lot of the people working with it were just people doing weird, silly stuff. Like, so, Korey KH is like a YouTuber who did like a lot of weird AI projects. And his final product for a lot of these would be things that like half worked and were interesting and weird and kind of never, like, always bad enough that you could never imagine like that being like a product or a service that existed in the world. It was always kind of like a fun little sort of like tinkering project with tech that was really interesting to sort of look at and consider. And, you know, I think AI stuff might be kind of like the next Bitcoin. And why I'm like more worried about it is because it's a lot cooler and it actually does a lot more stuff. And a lot of the promises that Bitcoin and sort of cryptocurrencies did a very narrow set of things. And people promised the moon. They promised everything. Right? And the problem is that AI actually does a lot more stuff. And it's a lot more instantly obvious to a consumer. You don't need to pitch them as hard why it can change stuff and why it's really cool. And that makes me more nervous about it, because I think even though there's going to be a lot less fully like outright lies, there's going to be a lot more of the promises are deliverable.
It's going to be more disruptive to what we know.
But I still see people doing that same sort of overhyping, where they're promising the moon, they're promising everything. And I think, especially when you look at how AI is being used and like how large language models are being used to deliver information and knowledge to people, but like screwing it up pretty bad, that it can be a lot more dangerous, right? Because it's giving people access to what feels like really pat and easy answers, and it's, you know, ever so slightly sort of like corrupting the information that people have in their heads. And I say ever so slightly, sometimes it's just very wrong.
So what's interesting, something I've been reading about in parallel to that's not really the same problem, but it's related to ChatGPT, is that I've read, because I try to stay informed in certain spaces, that there's certain science fiction short story markets that are becoming inundated with fake, like, AI generated short stories.
Yeah.
To the point where they are no longer accepting open submissions. So there's at least 3 reasonably big science fiction markets that have closed to submissions because they have to read them. They have to open the mail, open the document, and read them. And the problem is people have seen the AI generated text and see that as a way of just making money. Yeah. And the interesting thing is that one of the funny theories that I've heard is that, well, people who are self-published, they see that they have whatever many books, they sell a small number of units, and they make a small amount of money. Yeah. They think all they need to do is scale that up. It's a volume game. Right. Yeah, exactly. So that this...
If I write 1 million books, no matter how good they are, and I make some of them are going to sell some.
If I make $1 on a book, but
if I make $1 on average, and I have 1 million books, then I'll make $1 million.
Right, and so the unintended consequence is what they've done is they've shut down some open markets. Yeah. Until they've come up with a solution for dealing with it on scale, so that it doesn't overwhelm them. Because the problem, I think, is that this is the part I learned that I wasn't aware of. Yeah. Is a lot of short fiction markets that are not genre, so not mystery, not science fiction, pay crap. That they pay in contributors' copies, which is not a way to make a living. Yeah. And that the science fiction market pays, I don't know, not even great, but it's like 10 cents on the dollar or something. Mm-hmm. And so to be considered a pro market, to be eligible for membership in the speculative, is it Science Fiction Fantasy Writers of America? Or
I have no clue.
I can't remember. Or Writers Association. Like, they've changed what the letters stand for over time. But that it's the only reason why these genre markets have been targeted is because they actually pay money.
So there's like a real return.
There's there's a potential return. Yeah. But they're not writing their own stories. They're giving prompts and letting the AI write what apparently are very bad stories.
It's like the even easier, even lower quality version of like Amazon, like an audiobook scamming. That was like a thing where people would find a trending topic, hire a ghostwriter at like really sort of like reduced, like barely like livable like rates to like write a book on basically a combination of like buzzwords, and then they would hire like a voice actor to like record it and then just post that. So that was a scam a little while ago, and then I think it's no longer valuable as a scam. So now there's a secondary scam market of people basically selling that scam to people as a get rich quick scheme. There was a really good Folding Ideas video on it. So it's like that, but even lower quality, where you're trying to just get ridiculously fast turnaround on content that is meant to trick some people into giving you money, but not be sort of valuable to anybody. You're trying to actually sort of reduce the value of content that you can get online by making it possible to be tricked into buying something that's total garbage.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, so should I say we're running out of time? I think we need to do something to bring it back to justice. So the funny thing was, somebody commented, I think a week or two ago, saying that you should put injustice in your title so people can find this. Yeah. And it would be true, I guess, if we spent more time talking about injustice on each episode. Now, hold on. I should mention then, part of the talking will be the video that you're watching here, which is an Earth to Solomon Grundy team, where instead of... So the first twist that we put into it, I don't even know if so much a twist. The first point we made when we first started doing Earth 2 Solomon Grundy videos was to say, hey, maybe when you want an Earth 2 team, you don't want all 3 Earth 2 characters. That Killer Frost is a good third team member because it really enhances the power generation dampening. And so we've done that. But then the next best thing is putting in Hawk Girl, because with Tantu Totem, Earth 2 Solomon Grundy is he's a totally legitimate specialist. When his special 2 is broken up, each piece does a significant amount of damage, and he has the chance to knock out a bunch of people. So he doesn't have the same problem that the newer characters have, where only the last hit of their special 2 can knock out a character, an opponent. It's a pretty good team, but I'm really looking forward to next week's team, which I've already been playing around with again, which is Static. And there's a really neat combination that I've been playing with Static that works just as well. Like, it's just, I don't know, there's something about it, there's a synergy about it that of non-team members or non-universe members that makes it so much more fun. But yeah, take a look. Earth to Solomon Grundy, great character. You overcome his slow basics by making him your specialist. And that's the point.
So there we go.
We should have a question, though.
Yeah, we'll do one question. I do want to say one last thing, which is just like sort of my wrap up of this whole AI and work discussion.
Okay.
I touched on it later, but I want to say it more explicitly. When we are developing technology that allows us to have the exact same world, have the exact same amount of sort of net productivity with less human labor, when we are doing things that automate people's work,
right,
we should be making life easier for people, not harder, not more uncertain, not more inequitable. And I don't have an easy answer for you, but I just think it feels like it should be so fundamental.
Universal income.
Yeah.
That's easy.
It's true. I think there's systemic things, but I don't have an easy answer for any individual who's hearing that to go, okay, what do I do with that?
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think we should be in a like unprecedented period of being able to like find meaning in our life on our own terms, and not based off of sort of a struggle for survival. And we continue to make arbitrary struggles for survival when we solve and privatize sort of lesser struggles, when we take a lot of the work, the network that needs to be done out of the world,
when
we just make up new things to do, and we reduce the security of the poor and the middle class.
The solutions should benefit everybody.
Yeah.
That's really it, right? Like absolutely, 100% agree with you.
It just feels like such an easy, obvious thing to me. I don't know.
Yeah.
Clearly not. Yeah. But, okay. So, our first question of the week comes from Bree, and they say, "Hi, I just did Silver Breakthrough, and it only allowed me to buy one card for my character, and then the button disappeared. And also, character doesn't receive any XP points. Is it okay?"
100%. So this is something, sometimes it's easy to forget that there are always newer players coming along.
Yeah.
And it's a nice reminder. We appreciate that when people discover our channel, that they're willing to engage and ask questions. I think there's something to be said for the idea, even though it's not right, of the phrase, there's no such thing as a bad question, because there are bad questions. Yeah. But most of them are actually pretty good. There are bad questions.
It's very hard to have a good faith bad question.
Right. I think that's it, right? It's good faith. That's the key part. And because I don't know that there's a good explanation for this anywhere. Or if there is, I think it happens when you go through breakthrough the first time. Yeah. And then it never comes up again. So you can't, sometimes when you have an answer to a question that you didn't ask, where you don't have the context for understanding information. Yeah. That it's harder to...
Where they just throw something at you. The tutorial comes too early.
Right. So I think that there's it's hard for people to understand that information as they get it, and it's hard to bring it back at a time when they have more experience to understand what it's talking about. Yeah. So the key is, each time you win breakthrough and you pick one character to get that breakthrough, that only takes them one level up. So when you break, so the limit is 7, Elite 7.
Yeah.
Breakthrough lets you get to Elite 8. Then you have to do another breakthrough for that one character to 9, and then one more time to 10. And it isn't until you get to 10 that you unlock the potential to go from level 50 to level 60, and that's when you accumulate XP again.
Yeah.
So the way it's behaving is exactly right. That's how it's supposed to be.
Yeah, and one more copy, and then no more XP. It's just an extra elite level right now.
Right. And so the harder thing is, if it's a character that you've built up from packs and you've never unlocked them in the challenge, or they're maybe a multiplayer exclusive, then you, even when you do breakthrough, but if you don't have extra copies on hand,
you can't buy more.
Right. You can't actually take advantage of the breakthrough. So they have the potential to get to Elite 8 or Elite 9 or Elite 10, depending on how many times you put them through. But it will look like you can't because you don't have the copy to do it.
Yeah.
And it's not because the breakthrough didn't work. It's because the mechanics of a character that's unlocked in the store, you just need credits. Mechanics of a character that you've never unlocked, you actually need to get another copy of them. You need to get another card from a pack or subsequently unlock them. Yeah.
So there we go. Is that all of our questions this time, or are we going to do one more?
Yeah, I think there's an important one because it's time sensitive. Maybe we'll do the next one.
So Frenemy Gaming asks, "Hey bro, please, my phone suddenly restarted and had an issue. But when I open Injustice game, they tell me Injustice is having problems connecting to other Google Play services that are not available, of which I have the Play services and play games. Please, how can I solve this issue? It suddenly stopped my Phantom mode from opening. I have missed it twice now.
Right. So the key, I think, is that this is something that's happened with the game and Google Play services. They are no longer working together. You cannot log into your Google Play account through Injustice.
Yeah.
This has happened before. It happened. I thought it was more recent, but it looks like it happened, based on my notes, maybe like 2.5, 3 years ago.
It probably something about Google Play services updated in some way.
Yes.
And so there are sort of new things that every app needs to do in order to use all of the features.
Right.
And so this is sort of their like pre-prepared went wrong message.
Yes.
And what they need to do is go in and make it compliant with the new Google Play,
Right.
however that works.
So the reassuring thing is that even a few years ago, when they hadn't had updates for a while, that they were still willing to do not a content update, but a bug fix update to make this better. So the best glitch, which is a challenge reset, does require this to be working, and it's not working now. So unfortunately, you're gonna basically have to play the game limited to exactly what's possible now. And you're going to have to rely on WBID to save your progress because your Google Cloud Save will no longer do it. But it's not just you. It is anybody on Android right now. And we are very hopeful that a bug fix will come out. Last time it took maybe a couple weeks.
Yeah.
So maybe this will be a better indicator. I mean, we haven't had any real indications about how much they're paying attention to Injustice and trying to keep it running.
Yeah.
And whether they come up with a bug fix for this or not, like an update to Injustice in order to make it compatible with Google Play services, will tell us a lot more about how far along the death spiral Injustice Gods Among Us is taking. Yeah.
So there we go. Fingers crossed we see an update soon.
We are hopeful. Listen, we love this game. We hope so.
So, to finish up, I'd like to give a shout out to Eliza ChatGPT Caton. She is a large language model. You ask her something, you tell her something, and she just spits a bunch of words out that were generated by the internet. Totally.
Right.
It's all, I don't really know where I'm going with this. It just feels...
You would be better if you got ChatGPT to help you out.
I should try ChatGPT and see if it can write some nickname jokes.
Okay.
Maybe. Probably not very well, but
yeah.
This shout out was brought to you by AI, and it's imminent or non-imminent improvements, and either it's replacement of jobs or the sort of upcoming bust as all the people who have invested into it find out that it is just kind of a cool and fun thing for people to mess around with, and not the next big industrial revolution.
Right.
We'll see.
Okay.
We'd also like to give a huge thank you to all the very real non-robot supporters of us on Patreon.
And that would be Korey Ashcraft supporting us at the Last Word tier, Michael Devries, Irvin Ruiz, Hoshi127, and Drew Chapman, who are supporting us on the credited level. And all the lovely people who have given us any support during this pandemic, whose names you should be seeing or have seen pass by you on the screen.
Yeah, so thanks so much for your support, and thanks so much to all of you for watching. We'll see you next time.
Komoda.